Yeah, there's gonna be spoilers. Hey guys, it's Ronin Time HD here, and welcome back to another Ticket Tuesday. I almost forgot to say it. But today, or tonight, whatever, we watched X. And if you don't know what that is, it's an A24 horror film. And I'll get more in depth when we get to the house. But I will say it was good and enjoyable. And I'll tell you why back at the house.
You don't want to leave, do you?
People's eyes are gonna pop out of their damn skulls when they see this. What? Are you alright?
No.
One of the boys found this inside.
What do you think is on it?
I see one goddamn fucked up horror picture.
Hey guys, I'm Ronin Time HD, and today we're gonna be talking about a movie that's nothing at all like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, actually. Sorry, it's nothing at all like Texas Chainsaw.
Go.
Oh, okay. Hey guys! Today, on this Ticket Tuesday, we watched X, directed by Ti West. And I'm just gonna jump straight to the chase. For the people that have, not for, like, the viewers, but like, I'm gonna talk about, in general, the people that have reviewed this movie. There are, like, a common consensus between the people that like it and the people not like, like, the whole argument is that the movie is like Texas Chainsaw for both sides. But the bad side is they hate it because it's a ripoff of Texas Chainsaw, right? And the other side, the people that like it, they're like, oh, I love this movie because of how well it homages Texas Chainsaw. And I'm gonna say both sides are wrong, and not that their opinions are wrong. I'm saying that this is not an homage. Well, I mean, it is, but it's not a ripoff of Texas Chainsaw, and it's not a homage. There are scenes that reference Texas Chainsaw, and it has influence, but it is not like an homage, like, only really in premise. So it's not a ripoff of Texas Chainsaw, because it's just not. You know, it's got a different theme, I feel. Yes, the premise is the same, but similarities is like, well, I think the only reason people say it's an homage or it's a ripoff is because it's in Texas, it's in the 70s, and they go in a barn and there's a massacre at a farm. Right? There's a massacre at a farm in Texas in the 1970s. That is the alignment. That is why it's a ripoff or why it's an homage. No! No, it's not! These films are not that similar. Alright, I love Texas Chainsaw. They're similar, but they're not so much to be an homage, or definitely not a ripoff. Like, I don't really get why people say it's an homage. I mean, I can understand it a little bit, but a ripoff is kind of stretching it. But of how much I love the original Texas Chainsaw, it's up there with one of my favorite horror films, right next to The Shining and The Lighthouse. So, this movie, I think, taking influence, not homaging and not ripping off, I think it does a good job at being its own thing, while also referencing Texas Chainsaw when it needs to. But another thing, they never use a chainsaw in this, right? No chainsaws. Because if there was a chainsaw, then I would have been like, okay, now I see where the rip-off thing or the, like, homage thing comes from. But there's no chainsaw. It's not even a mallet. There's hammers, but they never use them. They just use guns and pitchforks and a knife once. So there's, like, the characters only get killed by usually one weapon. And actually, this movie is just, I like this movie, okay? It's a lot, even though the previous weeks weren't bad, I just think this is, like, you know, something more along my, my style. I mean, Cyrano and Dog were not terrible. They had their moments, but they're not really my thing, you know. But like, horror movies, and I feel like this movie felt more like a slasher flick, right? And we don't get those that much anymore, which is like, I kind of like slasher flicks. We're getting a lot of elevated horror now, and I just think we're in the need of a classic, good old-fashioned slasher flick. And I think this one does it quite well. There's only one survivor, and I'm not going to tell you who that is, but there's one survivor, like in every slasher movie from the 80s. Usually how it goes, right? Only one survivor. Now we have more than one survivor, because you gotta have expendables for the next movie. But, not this time. Not this time. But yeah, I thought this movie was actually, it actually was pretty funny. Like, I didn't expect it to be as funny as it was. There was a lot of, like, humor in it. Even during the scary parts, there was some humor. You know, like, I think this movie was a bit of like, I wouldn't say it was a full-on comedy, per se. I would say it's horror with a pinch of comedy. You know, like, with a little salt on there, like, to, like, spice it up. All good horror movies have a pinch of comedy, because if the horror movie takes itself a bit too seriously, then you kind of start laughing at it instead of with it, if you know what I mean. I thought this movie was a lot of fun, especially with the kills during, like, I like also how this movie was, like, a whole build-up to the third act where everybody starts to die, right? Like, nobody dies in the first and the second act, but in the third act, fucking everybody dies.
Spoiler alert!
It's like Mark Ruffalo, Avengers of Forever. Everybody dies. Dude, oh, not everybody. It's really good. I really liked it. I actually think, since it's A24 and horror, which I think is A24's forte, I really, honestly, as I said earlier, The Lighthouse is one of my favorite horror movies of all time. I love The Lighthouse. It's an absolute masterpiece. I've never seen The Witch, but I plan on seeing it. The Northman, which I'm very excited for, which is also made by the same guy that made The Witch and The Lighthouse. It's a Viking movie, and Vikings are pretty fucking cool, so. Vikings are metal as fuck, dude! Fucking metal as fuck, dude! That's Vikings for you. I'm just getting off topic because I really like Robert Eggers, but the kills, as I said, only appear in the end of the third act, and I think the lamest one is, I'm not gonna say who it was, but I think theirs was like, you didn't really get to see it, and it was just a gunshot, and you never even got to see what happened to them. They just got shot in the middle of nowhere, and then you never even see the body. They just get shot, and then nothing. Which I think was kind of lame, because they showed everybody else get shot, and pretty, like, not, like, abruptly, like, not very short. Like, there's quite a bit of time to get to look at the gore, but I think there was only, like, one frame where you saw the gore in that. Granted, there was another character who got shot, like, at the very end, but you actually got to see it, and it was pretty good. And I think the best kill, though, was you know how every horror movie has the slasher get killed, right? The slasher always has to get killed. This one, they actually did get killed, because they're not an immortal being, or a fucking ghoul, or whatever, with, like, a zombie, like fucking Jason. They're just crazy rednecks.
So there's going to be spoilers in this video.
Yeah, there's going to be spoilers, because I can't really talk about, I'm not going to talk about who dies, but you know the crazy rednecks are going to die. It's a slasher film. I think the gore looked really good. There was actually a cow, I can't believe I'm saying it, but there was a cow, at the beginning of the movie, a cow got ran over by a tractor who's roadkill, and it looked really good, and, like, the cow's guts were spilled all over the street. It looked pretty good, and honestly, I'm like, oh yeah, that's gonna have some good kills. It was really good. There was even a good old-fashioned blood fountain. You gotta love a blood fountain. You can't have a horror movie without a blood fountain, especially a slasher flick. You ever seen Friday the 13th? You know, there's so many blood fountains, and there's so many blood fountains in Friday the 13th. You could make an entire cruise ship for vampires, and it would be a luxury vacation. Anyway, I think the kills were really good, and I thought the slasher kill, I'm just gonna, cause you know the killer's gonna die, because that's how these movies work, but, like, I'm not gonna say how, but they're crawling on the ground, and then a car, like, it drives backwards and it crushes their head. It looked fucking great. And you could, like, it was stayed on the head for a little bit, and it, like, even when they drove away, like, the skull, wasn't it their skull, like, a piece of her skull, like, went boop, 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 and, like, wiggled around. It looked great. I thought the kills were really good. I think also, actually, I think the lamest kill was one of the slashers, ironically. It was pretty funny, though. It was, like, a funny death. I thought it was great.
Was there too much TNA for you?
Not really. I mean, the movie's called X, dude.
Okay.
I mean, if you've seen the trailer, you know what you're getting into when you watch into this movie, right? Like, that's the whole premise. The whole plot of the movie is based on... I can't say it because Big Brother YouTube's
You can just say it.
It's, hang on, guys. Sex.
Oh, my goodness.
Don't tell Susan. She's gonna kill me. Don't tell Susan.
Don't know what that means.
She's the CEO of YouTube, Susan Wojcicki.
Okay.
Cut that part out. But anyway, as I said, I think you should watch this movie if you're into horror movies. And honestly, I just think this movie is... I just think we need more slasher films now. You know? I mean, Scream 5 was a slasher film, and I thought it was good at it. Scream 5, I think, did a modern slasher right. Because you can't just do what the 80s did. Because it was the 80s, right? There was, like, no standards in the 80s, right? As time grew on, we've grown standards. And I think we should make, like, a modern... Like, what Scream 5 did. But, like, Scream 5 wasn't just... a slasher film. It was also a take on elevated horror and stuff like that. It's a Scream film, so, you know, but being a Scream film, it was a slasher, right? I wouldn't go as far to say that this was better than Scream 5, because I really liked Scream 5. I would say they're not really, I mean, they are both slashers, but I would say Scream 5, it's a continuation of a beloved franchise, and X is like a standalone, like... A24 horror flick. So, they're not really in the same category. They're in the same, like, genre, but not in the same category of slasher. Because slasher films have their own kind of categories and lists. I just think this film is refreshing. It's just refreshing because we're getting, as I said earlier, we're getting a lot of elevated horror. That's kind of like the fad of horror movies right now. Like, every horror studio is taking their shot at elevated horror, right? And you can't blame them, but I feel like elevated horror is getting a little tired. It's getting a little old, you know, because we're seeing the same thing over and over. And good studios like A24 can do it well, right? But I think... same thing as A24, since they're not just doing elevated horror, I think we could just use a little bit of fun. You know, elevated horror always has these, like, deep takes and all these philosophical whatnots, and I'm just like, I just want to have fun, you know? I don't want to contemplate about my existence when I'm watching a horror film, you know? I want to have fun and laugh at a stupid film for 2 hours, and I think this movie does it. It's not dumb. By all means, I mean dumb in a good way, not in a bad way. You're laughing with the movie, not at the movie. There's a difference. If you're laughing at a movie, that's kind of like a, let's say, like a so bad it's good. I would say it's enjoyable, it's fun, it's dumb in a good way, and it is refreshing. Delightfully bloody in the third act. Because there's a lot of blood in the third act. There's a lot of blood. Because in the movie, there's not that much blood, but during the third act, there's a bunch of blood. Alright, which, again, is where it all picks up and, like, the murderings start to happen. But it's good. Alright, guys, so now I'm going to rate this movie out of 10. I'm going to rate this movie an 8 out of 10. I thought it was good. I thought it was pretty good. And I think if you're a fan of horror movies, if you're a fan of, really just a fan of A24, I think, like, horror A24, because A24 doesn't just make horror films, but if you're into the A24 horror films, I think you would like this film. And I suggest go watch it. Support your local theater. So guys, hope you enjoyed the video. If you like it, share it with your friends, yada yada, subscribe, yada. But you know how it is. I don't mean any of that. What I really mean is, I hope you guys hated this video. Unsubscribe, dislike, tell me how much you hate me in the comments. Peace, boys. Okay, was that good? By the way, not a Texas Chainsaw movie.